testing. All right. Jackson is going to have a fight for Florida here. It is an area of the United States that we have not been able to secure despite our efforts. And so after his campaign against the Red Sticks, Jackson's going to continue his assault on Indians, and his next target is going to be the Seminole Indians of Florida. Now, if you're a Florida State fan, you know that their mascot is the Seminole. Okay, so the Seminole Indians of Florida will be Jackson's next fight after taking care of the Red Sticks. Now, he can't just do this on his own. He's got to have an order from someone. So guess who gives him permission to engage the Seminoles along with any Spanish that get in his way in Florida? Well, who's the president? You're close. Who's the president right now? James Monroe. So President James Monroe will give Jackson permission not only to engage the Seminoles in the area, but any Spanish who resist as well. So what Jackson's goal is in Florida, quite simply, is he's going to run both these parties out of Florida, and he's going to claim the area for who? The United States. So that's his plan. So he campaigns against the Red Sticks. He continues his assault of Indians by taking on the Seminole Indians in Florida. He gains permission from President Monroe not only to engage the Seminoles, but also any Spanish who are still in the area that want to resist. And his goal is to run both of these parties out of Florida and claim the area for the United States. Well, Jackson and his men had no problem. They were very victorious. His militia ran both the Seminoles and the Spanish out of Florida. And after his victory, guess what President Monroe appointed him? Governor of Florida. Governor of Florida. Okay? And he didn't spend a lot of time then. What he wanted to do is he wanted to establish a state government in Florida. And so he only served as governor for about 11 weeks. So after his victory over the Seminoles and any Spanish resistors, Jackson became governor of Florida, and he spent basically 11 weeks establishing a state government. And what do you think he did after he got done with that?
Chase some more Indians.
No, he was actually going to take some time off. So where did he go? Back, very good, back to his plantation in Tennessee. Okay, so he secures Florida for the United States as well, establishes a very strong government there, and retires back to his plantation. Okay, now this is going to take us to a very interesting election. And on your test will be a short essay just on this election. So make sure you get the details down. The election of 1824. Very interesting election. So make sure you know this, because this will be 30 points of your 100 points on your test next week. The election of 1824. Now, it's 1824. Jackson's back on his plantation in Tennessee. And really he had become a national hero for two reasons. One, his victory over the British where? At New Orleans in the War of 1812. And then he gained much national hero status for his successes against both the Creek Indians and the Seminole Indians during that period of time. So people viewed him as a national hero. Why? Because he had a great victory over the British in New Orleans in the War of 1812, and he cleared Indian resistance out as well in the southern part of the United States. Now, because of this, he began to gain a lot of followers and a lot of support. Okay, people like to hang on to a winner, right? And because of his status as a national hero and a winner, a lot of people started to support and follow him. And they really pressed him to do what at this point? Run, very good, run for president of the United States. And Jackson took some time and he thought about it. And then he decided, you know what? I am going to make a move on the presidency in 1824. So Jackson decides that he will try to become president of the United States as a virtue of the election of 1824. So that kind of sets the stage for the election, gives you the background of his interest. Well, here's the interesting thing about this election. What party has pretty much fizzled out? I mean, Monroe ran against no one in 1820. So there really is no Federalist Party in this election. The only party in the election of 1824 is going to be the Republican Party. And they are actually going to nominate 4 men for the presidency. And all 4 are going to be Republicans. So because of the Federalist Party still being out of commission, 4 men are going to run for the presidency in 1824, and all 4 are going to represent the Republican Party. Now this isn't going to be any different than any other election. They're going to need 131 electoral votes to win the presidency. So whichever of these 4 candidates gets 131 electoral votes is going to be the next president. That's how it's going to work. So it's no different. And we're not even going to get into the vice presidential candidates because we're just going to stick with the presidential candidates. Well, here are your 4 men that run for the presidency in 1824. All should be familiar names. First of all, John Quincy Adams from Massachusetts. John Quincy Adams from Massachusetts. Another familiar name that will run for the presidency in 1824 from Georgia, William H. Crawford. William H. Crawford from Georgia will run. Obviously, Jackson's going to win, and he's going to run, and where's he from? Tennessee. So you'll have Andrew Jackson from Tennessee, and who are we going to have from Kentucky, Brady? Come on, impress me. From Kentucky, very, very striking appearance, very good speaker. No. Who? Henry Clay. So we have Henry Clay from Kentucky. So the 4 men that are going to run for the presidency, all representing the Republican Party, are... Go ahead.
John Quincy Adams, William H. Crawford, and Jackson Henry Clay.
Right, know where they're from. Quincy Adams is from Massachusetts, Crawford from Georgia, Clay from Kentucky, Jackson from Tennessee. Did you have another question, or you just helped me out?
I was going to know where they're from.
Okay, so John Quincy Adams, Massachusetts, William H. Crawford, Georgia, Henry Clay, Kentucky, and Andrew Jackson from Tennessee. So, there's 2 types of vote, right? The popular vote and the electoral vote. I'll tell you how the popular vote went first. In 4th place, with 46,979 popular votes, in 4th place, with 46,979 popular votes, was William H. Crawford. Now, if you write your candidates down, how you take notes, however you do it, it works. In 3rd place, with the popular vote count of 47,217, 47,217 is Henry Clay. In 2nd place, in the popular vote, with 114,023 votes, 114,023 votes, was John Quincy Adams. And your winner in the popular vote will be Andrew Jackson, obviously, with 152,901. So you've got Crawford in 4th, 46,979. Clay in 3rd, 47,217. John Quincy Adams is the runner-up in the popular vote, 114,023 votes. And in the popular vote, winner was Andrew Jackson, 152,901. Now we all know, hey, how's it going? It's actually probably in my printer.
Oh.
Yeah, come back if you can't find it. So we all know, especially with this last election, that popular votes and $1.25 might buy you a beverage in the machine there. They don't mean a lot. So they need electoral votes. Here is the electoral vote count. A little bit different than the popular. Not a lot, but a little bit. In 4th place was Henry Clay. He received just 37 electoral votes. Henry Clay. So he was in 4th when the electoral votes were finalized. In 3rd place with 41 electoral votes was William H. Crawford. William H. Crawford finished third with 41 electoral votes. The runner-up in the Electoral College was John Quincy Adams, and he had 84. John Quincy Adams. Clay 37, Crawford 41, John Quincy Adams 84. And your winner in the Electoral College in 1824, Andrew Jackson, with 99 electoral votes. And so Andrew Jackson becomes the next president of the United States, and we all live happily ever after, correct? What's the problem? He doesn't have 131. Which means if no one gets the electoral vote, who is going to decide the presidency? The House of Representatives. Okay? So none of the four candidates who ran for the presidency had accumulated the necessary 131 electoral votes for majority, and as a result, the election of this new president in 1824 will be decided by the House. Now, we never had this situation before, but according to rule, only the top 3 vote getters in the Electoral College are going to be eligible to be voted on by the House. So who's out? Henry Clay is out. Okay? Henry Clay is out. So the House will vote upon who? Crawford, John Quincy Adams, and Andrew Jackson. All right, so Henry Clay's out. Well, unfortunately for the rest of the candidates, Henry Clay had great support in the House. And he's going to use his influence to support one single candidate. He's going to campaign with the House to try to get one candidate of those 3 elected. And he pushes hard and throws his support behind John Quincy Adams. So the House is going to vote. And at the time, there were 24 members of the House of Representatives that would vote on this. 24 members of the House are going to vote on this. And here is the vote from the House of Representatives that elects our president in 1824. Crawford, 4 votes from the House. Jackson, 7. John Quincy Adams, 13. Crawford gets 4, Jackson gets 7, John Quincy Adams gets 13. So because of the rule of the Constitution and the vote in the House of Representatives, John Quincy Adams becomes the nation's 6th president of the United States. And the man that will serve as his vice president will be John C. Calhoun. John C. Calhoun. So, when we ask you about that, we're going to ask you to know the circumstances, which means that the circumstances are that the Federalist Party is no longer in being, so the Republican Party will nominate 4. You'll need to know all 4, where they're from, how many popular votes they received, how many electoral votes they received, what they needed for the presidency in electoral vote, and the circumstance that led John Quincy Adams to the presidency, which means they would go to the House, and he would win 13 to 7 to 4 because Henry Clay, who was eliminated through his support to Quincy Adams. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Now that'll take us to our next subtopic, which makes sense, which is Jackson against Adams. You think Jackson was pretty happy about this? No. Very unhappy. Jackson against Adams. Now, unhappy might not be the proper term if you wanted to express Andrew Jackson's feelings about the election of 1824. He wasn't unhappy, he was very bitter. Very, very bitter. Now, why would he feel bitter? He had the largest number of popular votes, and he had the largest number of electoral votes. And he believed in his mind, because of that, he should have been president of the United States. That's what he believed, that he should be the president of the United States. Now, this event put Jackson over the top. I mean, this is what that means, is he just was the most frustrated and just unbelievably frustrated. This is the event that put him over the top as far as this election of 1824 went. Guess what he did? Guess what John Quincy Adams did once he was elected? Think about it. What's the most important, up to this point in history, cabinet position you could be in if you were in the president's cabinet? Well, think about it. Secretary of State. How many people that were Secretary of State under presidents became president so far? All of them, right? And so that was a very important position. You'll never guess who John Quincy Adams named as Secretary of State. Never guess. Who? Henry Clay.
Girls, I'm trying to run a class.
Henry Clay is named Secretary of State. That event put Jackson over the top. Because he knew that in history, up to that point, that the men who served as Secretary of State under presidents eventually became president. And he was just furious. He believed that President Adams had basically handpicked his successor by choosing Clay as his Secretary of State. And who was the man that put all his support behind Adams in the House? Clay. Well, Jackson was outraged, and he claimed this appointment of Henry Clay as Secretary of State was a corrupt bargain, which is on your ID sheet. So, a corrupt bargain was what Andrew Jackson called this appointment by John Quincy Adams of Henry Clay as Secretary of State. It was a corrupt bargain. That they had made a deal that if Henry Clay pushed his support behind Adams with the House, that he would be named Secretary of State. In those days, that was a corrupt bargain. In today's world, that's what you do, right? So that's what happened. And that really caused some tremendous ill feelings. Now, you know what Jackson referred to Henry Clay as? What he referred to him as, do you think? What was his religious term he used? Called him a what? Who betrayed Jesus Christ? Judas. He called him the Judas of the West. Okay? Jackson even went as far as to refer to Henry Clay after this deal as, quote, the Judas of the West. The Judas of the West, referring to the man that had betrayed Jesus Christ. What do you think that Jackson did beginning in 1825 after this election? Oh man, you're right. He put out an all-out effort to win the presidency in 1828. He devoted his every second of his life almost, to making sure that he won the presidency in 1828. He got so mad during this campaign, and he really campaigned, like Macklin said, for 3 years. Because as soon as this election got over and he got settled down, beginning in 1825, he started campaigning. Okay? And he even got so upset at the situation that he wouldn't even refer to himself as a Republican anymore. You know what he called himself? Come on. A Democratic Republican, which led to the present day Democratic Party. Called himself a Democratic Republican and referred to President Adams as a national Republican. So not only did he devote 3 years of his life preparing for the election of 1828, he wouldn't refer to himself as a Republican. He called himself a Democratic Republican, and referred to President Adams as a national Republican. All right. This will take us to our last subtopic of this year, calendar year that is, the election of 1828. The election of 1828. Now in this election, who are the Republicans going to nominate for re-election? John Quincy Adams. Now, a party's going to nominate Jackson, but they're not going to call themselves the Republicans. They're not even going to call themselves the Democratic Republicans. They're going to call themselves the Democratic Party. So the Democrats nominate Andrew Jackson. So for the first time in history, you've got Republicans versus Democrats. Okay? So the Republican Party nominates President John Quincy Adams for re-election. The Democratic Republicans, or Democrats for short, nominate Andrew Jackson. And I'll tell you, the Republicans ran a horribly dirty campaign against Jackson. Horribly dirty. And for those standards especially. During the time that the campaign went on, Jackson's opponents made personal attacks against Jackson's family on 2 separate occasions. Personal attacks against Jackson's family. Now this is just what it is, so I hope you don't get offended. Republicans that campaigned against Jackson referred to his wife as not only an adulteress, but a W-H-O-R-E. Called her that publicly. So they referred to Jackson's wife as an adulteress and a W-H-O-R-E.